This episode of Millennial Pagan Podcast is dedicated to the memory of Ray Watkins, who passed to the other side on January 25th. He was the co-owner of the Astrology store in Glendale, Arizona. Our thoughts are with his longtime partner, Dave. Welcome to Millennial Pagan Podcast. We're your hosts, Autumn Wolf
and Jera Stone. And in studio today, we have Jennifer Hoperich from Magical Mamas.
Hello.
Hey, it's great to be here. Thanks.
Yeah, welcome to the show.
Happy Imbolc, everyone.
Yes, Imbolc.
It was today or yesterday, however you look at it, or start at sunset on January 31st. But it's a beautiful day here in the valley, which means we're going to have a little bit longer of a winter.
I know, yeah. I guess the groundhog did its thing.
Well, I go by the older tale of if the Kaliak made the sun nice and warm so she can go get the rest of her firewood, she's going to make it a longer winter.
Oh, okay.
But that's just me, so there's a little snippet of stuff we did not talk about in our Patreon-supported episode. Yeah. But how are you, Jera?
I'm doing pretty good. A little drained from the ritual last night. It was a little bit of a healing ritual, but I'm feeling good, feeling fine. Yeah,
ready, fancy free,
ready to make things happen. You know.
Awesome. And yeah. Jennifer, how are you?
Doing well. A little sleepy. I had a birth last night.
Yeah,
but doing well. Happy to be here. It's beautiful weather, like you said, and yeah, just thinking about Goddess Bridget and hoping to make a Bridget's cross from some palm fronds later on today with my little girl.
We do have plenty of palm fronds around here in the desert, so that is awesome.
Now, just to clarify, you didn't give birth last night.
You look fantastic.
I know. Wow. This was really important to me, you guys, to be here for this podcast, okay?
Left new baby at home. Whoa.
Yeah. No, I'm a midwife, so I was attending a birth last night.
Nice.
Yes. So we actually have you on not to just talk about a little bit of midwifery, but mostly to focus on astrology. But before we dive into that, let's go ahead and ask you to share as much or as little as you want of your coming of witch story.
Sure. I love that you guys have this segment in your podcast. I love listening to it.
Hey.
Let's see. So it started for me, I think, really similarly to a lot of people, where I was learning about the witch trials, the Salem witch trials in school. And I was fascinated by it. I actually went to the library and studied more about it on my own, which I had never done for anything before. And then there was, so I was born in 1979. And so when, are you guys familiar with the band Hole?
Yes.
Courtney Love? Okay.
Okay. All right.
So her album Live Through This came out. And on the inside of the album, it was, I think I got it on tape, probably, or maybe it was CD, but on the insert in there was this image of a heart with a witch in it. And that image just blew me away, and I felt so connected, and I didn't even know why or what that meant. And I actually got that image tattooed on my body. And then later on, when I started studying midwifery, we call it the Midwifery Bible. This particular text, it's called Holistic Midwifery. And in the introduction, she dedicates the book to the witches who walked into the sea, as opposed to being, burned at the stake. They were the midwives who were accused of witchcraft. And so when I read that, I just got showered in chills, and I realized that there was, something.
Mm-hmm. I'm covered in goosebumps.
Something in my lineage about that. And then the first time that I helped to catch a baby, I had this flood of memories of doing that before. Well, I thought they were dreams that all came in, but then as I started doing more of my studies, I realized that they were past lives that I had re-experienced of being a midwife. And I think that I was burned at the stake, and I've had some past life regressions that have led me to believe that there was some of that in my history. And so when I was pregnant with my daughter, she told me that I needed to learn astrology. And so after I had her, I started diving into that. And then I started learning about goddess mythology. And I had been a midwife for a long time by that point and had been a student of nature just by being a midwife. And the more that I learned about the wheel of the year and just how it all works together, it was like puzzle pieces that just started making sense. Yeah. Of like, okay, this is why I felt this way, and this is why things work this way. And so it's just been something I've been fascinated in ever since. And I love learning. Like, I really enjoyed your episode about the witch trials. And
Thank you.
Yeah. So yeah, I've just loved learning about all of that. And it's interesting because I think with religion, like, I don't identify myself as Wiccan, but I do identify myself as a witch, because I feel like it's so all-encompassing, and there's so much freedom for exploration of what you truly believe is and feel is right for yourself. So it's been an evolution for sure, but those are just some little snippets of things that were meaningful to me along the way.
No, that was awesome. Thank you for sharing.
So what would you say is like your everyday practice, if you have one?
Yeah. Well, a lot of what I do is tuning into goddess energy. So like, well, I have an altar, and so I set that up at the new moon, and it feels really good to be linking up with the moon cycles. I'm a Cancer sun, so I know we'll talk more about that as we go forward, but I love the moon, and so like linking up with the moon helps me a lot. So I have like a little almanac, and I'll look and see what sign the moon is in, and kind of feel out my day, and that gives me some grace, like if I'm feeling really upset, well, maybe, there's an astrological reason for that, or something that maybe I'm just really tuned in to what's happening in the heavens. And so I also do a daily practice of, I have like a little reminder that pops up on my phone 3 times a day, that says, get present. And I just will close my eyes and take in a nice deep breath and just feel what it feels like to be in this moment. And I call like God, I call like goddess or her, like what she's telling me, how I can connect with her, how I can be in service to her. So those are just some, having the altar and then the daily check-ins all throughout the day.
I like that, using the technology to remind yourself to be able to do that, especially in today's high-paced, high velocity world. Just to be able to take that moment and just realize where you are. I like that.
Yeah, it's huge. Like bringing myself present, it gives me so much peace because generally speaking, like, 99% of the time, there's not an emergency going on. Like usually things are pretty good, if you can get present to it.
Yeah. No, I love that. I might actually borrow that from you and do that. Cool. Now I'm thinking like, when in my day am I like, do I notice that I don't see the clock and I don't think about where I'm at and what I'm doing. So that's I like that. Do you so you get in touch with goddess? Is there a particular goddess that you connect with, or is it just goddess in general?
It's my girl Artemis. She is my girl. So Artemis, she's the goddess of birth and midwifery. And oh my gosh, there's just so many things that I love about her. But she's a virgin goddess, which means that virgin goddess doesn't mean that they're goddesses who didn't ever have conquests or have sex. It means that they were never married, so they never belonged to anybody. And so when she asked her father Zeus that she never be married. That was like, he told her she could like ask for some stuff, and that was like her main thing. I just never want to be married.
Don't hook me up with nobody. I want my freedom, my world.
Yeah, so she just is very free like that. And when she was born, her twin brother is Apollo. So her mom was on this island by herself when she was giving birth. And she gave birth to Artemis first. And Artemis came out really easily. And it was like no big deal for her mom. And then her brother Apollo was really difficult for her mom to birth. And so Artemis stepped in and was a midwife to her mom to assist her with the birth of her little brother. And so that's why she's all into birth and midwifery. And she also, she got to choose a band of warriors to be with her, and she chose a group of 9-year-old girls who would never age. And so that's who runs around with her in the forest, protecting all the animals and nature. It's just so cool.
It's adorable.
Yeah.
It's very Peter Pan-like almost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's neat.
And I just had this image of Artemis just walking out and being like, all right, he's having some problem back there. Let me take care of things here. Come on, let's do this.
He's just going to be trouble from the beginning. Arms up, ready. Hut, hut. All right.
Totally.
I'm prepared for him. Alrighty. And do you do any magical practices?
Yeah. Let's see. I'm trying to think of what my favorite one is. I think probably candle magic is my favorite because it's so easy. It's something that anybody can do. I also feel like it's really effective and also fun. Like you get to be kind of creative with it. So I like to get a candle and I'll choose a particular color based on what it is that I'm wanting to manifest. Like let's say I want to manifest some cash. So I might choose a green candle and then, you can dress it. Like I just use like a little bit of like honey or coconut oil even, just a little bit on there. And then you can actually put herbs on there too that might be helpful in what you're wanting to manifest. Like if I'm going to be manifesting money, I don't know. I use mugwort a lot because I just feel like it's a really potent magical herb for manifesting in general. So I might roll a little mugwort on there, and then you can carve into the candle like a particular amount. Like let's say I want to manifest $5,000 in a month. So you can carve in there $5,000 and then you can even write on there in 1 month. And then when you burn it, just the whole time, you're focusing on what you want to manifest and focusing on feeling what it feels like to receive it. So, that law of attraction, and just doing a meditation, imagining what good I'm going to do with that money, like how I'm going to support my family, support other people, what I'm going to be investing in with that money, how that benefits the world, focusing on the flow, receiving and giving and how that's good and that's natural. So yeah, that's probably one of my favorites. I feel like it's so versatile.
It's easy and in some cases can be very quick. It could be as long as you need it to be. I do love candle magic myself. Yeah. Yes. Cool. Awesome.
I just like the manifestation of it. We kind of coined the phrase, hashtag manifest like a mofo.
I love it.
Yeah, so we do Manifest Mondays, where we give little tidbits on how to do just good magic tips, or Magical Tip Monday, and we always do hashtag manifest like a mofo.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, love it.
Gotta thank Nama for that.
And Nama's coming back.
Yes.
Yay. So that's always a fun thing. But let's take a short break, and then we're going to dive into an astrology lesson. Millennial Pagan Podcast is exclusively supported by Patreon. Listeners like you can gain great benefits from your favorite show, such as...
At $1 a month, you get a personalized shout-out at the end of the next full-length episode.
At $5 a month, you receive a thank you card in the mail with a Millennial Pagan Podcast button and sticker enclosed. Additionally, $5 a month supporters have access to our monthly 30-minute minisodes.
Patreon supporters are also the first to learn about new and exciting updates to Millennial Pagan Podcast.
More benefits and exclusive content to come. Witchcrafted AZ is back with their O-Star Market. The O-Star Market will be on Sunday, March 15th from 2 to 6 at the Grow House Urban Agricultural Center. Come out and see Millennial Pagan Podcast, Phoenix Pagan Pride, and crafty witches making witchy crafts.
And we're back, and we're going to talk a little bit about astrology, something that's actually been fascinating to me ever since childhood.
Ooh.
Yeah, I mean, ever since I learned kind of like the basics of like who I am because I'm a Gemini, it kind of just interested me more just to kind of see how the alignment of the planets and the stars just have this special deep significance in who we are.
I totally agree. I've always so aligned with Aquarius stuff. Like when people are like, oh, I don't believe in that because it doesn't fit me. I'm like, no, I'm so an Aquarius. Like, title.
Also, one thing that really piqued my interest was Weird Al Yankovic actually came out with a horoscope song.
Ah.
And it's completely irreverent, has nothing to do with it, but it's like, it's just funny just how that kind of just all pieced together. But it's like, yeah, it just kind of made me even more interested because, you know, one of my idols was interested in it.
What was funny was last night while I was scrolling, I saw a 42 texts about Scorpios, and it was just like this one text or tweet was, I was on a date with a girl and she asked me my sign. I said Scorpio and she left. And it was like, yes. Sorry. Not sorry. But anyway, let's learn what all of this pop astrology means and actually get down to business.
Yeah.
With Jennifer.
Oh, thanks. Well, okay. So I want to just, be clear that I have a little bit of imposter syndrome because with astrology, it's so deep, like it's such a deep well. And so there's so much to go into. So my intention for your show is to do a very broad overview and explain a little bit about the signs and the houses and the planets and how they can relate to one another, and a little bit about how we can use astrology to support us in our lives. So I don't know, where would you like me to begin? Just basics?
Yes,
Okay.
let's go from basics and then
Basics.
build up, just in case we have somebody who's like, oh, I don't know anything. I don't even know my sun sign.
Okay, perfect. Well, let's see. I think that for someone who's just beginning with astrology, one of the best ways to begin to align ourselves with the cosmos is to begin to notice the phases of the moon. And I think as pagans, we already do that to some extent. And so that might be a really familiar place to begin. Like with tuning into the new moon as a time to perhaps set intentions for the moon cycle, the full moon as a time to see what has manifest, as the full moon, it illuminates things for us so we can see what came from those seeds that we were planting at the new moon. And then at the waning moon, looking at what are some things that we're ready to let go of, things that, maybe some things that didn't work out that we're ready to, let go to the wayside, making space for something new that we want to plant at the next new moon. So just as something to, just start thinking about, looking up, we can really connect really well with the moon. And the moon is the fastest moving planetary body. The moon moves into a different sign every 2.5 days. And so it's interesting if you look at astrology with where the moon is, what sign it's in. Sometimes it makes sense when you're like, God, everybody's so grumpy today. Why do I feel so pissed off about life?
Especially if you're in the retail world or the call center world.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, right. You would, be able to almost get like a consensus of like, what's up with everybody today? And then if you might, find a day where you feel like, gosh, everything's just so beautiful. And I feel like, everybody's in love or whatever. Like you might look at the moon and be like, oh, well, yeah, it's in Taurus right now or whatever. So that's, I think, a really easy way to start connecting with the cosmos is connecting with the moon and looking at that. So what I want to talk about, I guess to start with, would be the signs, because I think that that's what most of us are familiar with when we talk about astrology. And so there are 12 signs, and most of us probably know our sun sign. So like, if you're looking at an astrology chart or something like that, you're like, oh, I'm a Cancer or I'm a Leo or whatever. So, based on when you're born, you probably know that sign. And that is called the sun sign. And the reason why it's probably the most prevalent, the sun sign, is because it really relates to who you are. So it's like an overarching way of being that you have. And so, you're going to have that in common with those who are born within that, 30 days or so, with your sun sign. There's also a moon sign, which is where on the day of your birth, what sign the moon was in. Like we said, it moves every 2.5 days. So, what sign the moon was in the day that you were born. And then there's also your rising sign or your ascending sign. And that's just a point in the sky on the day that you were born. And so maybe I could dive into a little bit about would you like me to talk about maybe the moon sign too and the ascending of what those are?
Yes, and how those relate to how you act. I think that's important because I know those three for myself, but I don't know what that means. Yeah. Like, how does that relate to my personality or Jera's personality or Sound Guy T's personality?
Yeah, totally. Well, I'll use myself as an example. So for myself, my sun sign is Cancer. And so, Cancers are generally very nurturing, like caretakers, very motherly. And then my moon sign is in Taurus. And Taurus is very much about the earth. It's an earth sign. It's all about the senses. And my rising sign or my ascending sign is in Leo, which is all about the self. It's about self-expression, being seen. So who I am, what I do in my life is I'm a midwife. So I'm very like nurturing and motherly like. And then with Taurus, my moon sign in Taurus, the moon sign it's interpreted in many different ways. That's another thing that's important for me to share is that with astrology, there are many different ways of looking at things, and each book that you read will have a little different take, even on the meaning of these things. So what does the moon sign mean? For some, they say that the moon sign is what you love. For some, they say that it's what your natural instincts are. So there's different ways to interpret it. But like my moon sign being in Taurus, I love the earth. I love, I also like to, like Tauruses can be like bullheaded, they say. And so I'm very much like, promoting the things that are important to me. And I don't take shit from people. So that's important. It's just a part of who I am. And I actually love that. I love standing up for myself. I love watching other people stand up for themselves. And then my rising sign in Leo, one interpretation of the rising sign is that that's how other people see you. So that's like, some people say it's the mask that you wear. The other interpretation is that your rising sign is who you're becoming this lifetime. So who you're evolving into through life experience, the sign that you're moving into. So for me, so I'm a midwife, like I said, so that makes sense, and I'm also a mother with my, the Cancer as my sun sign, that I love nature. I'm in the business of nature, and I'll talk about houses in just a minute, but my moon sign, what I love, Taurus for me, is in the house of career. And so my career is super important to me. Like that's what I love. That's where I feel the most myself. And then with my ascendant being in Leo, I lead mama groups. And so I'm in front of, 40 or 50 women on a regular basis every month and doing retreats. And I've been doing that for years and years. I was in a band. So being in front of people, people just would assume that, I love being in the spotlight and stuff like that. So the idea with the ascendant is that if somebody was going to guess what your sign is, they'd probably guess what your ascendant is. So that's why that's an important one to know too. So even though like Cancers are typically very reclusive and need a lot, the sign or the animal symbol for them is the crab, with the shell and scurrying behind a rock. That is actually true for me. I need a lot of alone time. I need to be hidden, but then also I love to be in the spotlight. It's a really actually strange combo to have astrologically.
It's all about balance. It's the alone time is to recharge your battery so you have the ability to present in front of a large group.
Exactly. Yeah. And like we were saying, earlier that when we were on the break was that one thing that I love about astrology, how it's made the biggest difference for me in my life, is compassion. Because it would be easy for me to judge myself and be like, why do I always need to retreat, or like, why can't I just, be in front of people? Like, why? Because this is such a trip for me too, but I have social anxiety. And so it's like a person who has social anxiety who puts herself in front of people all the time. But then you look at the stars and it's like, well, yeah, okay, actually somehow that makes sense. But it gives me a sense of compassion, like, yeah, actually I do need that alone time. There's nothing wrong with me that I need to run away and hide at times, actually. Like that, just like you said, that's part of how I can replenish myself.
And completely natural for you and who you are. That's awesome.
I'm so interested now to find out like my whole shtick.
Right? No, she's talking about the ascending, saying like that's how people see you. Well, my ascending is my father's sun sign. So I'm like, oh, a lot of people do see a lot of my father in me. And I'm like, oh, that's where they see it.
Totally. And that's actually really common in astrology to have signs that will kind of weave in together in families. So like I'm a Cancer sun, and then my daughter is, she's a Scorpio, sun, and then she's also a Scorpio moon, but she's a Cancer rising. Okay, so my son is also a Cancer. And he's a Scorpio rising. So like they have like opposite signs from each other, but we're all water signs. And like, so both my children have some Cancer, like, primary in their chart. So that's really common for it to run like that through families.
Ooh.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's the exact kind of tidbit that I'm looking for. Yeah, exactly. So, is there anything more that you want to talk about these three big areas of anybody's chart or of astrology?
I think with these three areas, just noticing how they intermingle together can be really fascinating. And as you're looking, at the signs of each of those, you'll get some really potent insights into yourself. But also looking at the houses that they're in will give you a lot of information too. So we can talk about that too.
Yeah, I was actually just about to say, you kind of touched on the houses. I'm a little bit more interested in that.
Yeah. All right. So the signs are, almost like personalities, like we were talking about these, the Cancer and Leo and stuff. So those are kind of like the personality types. They have a personality to them. The houses are the areas of your life where these personalities are going to show up the most. So it's a wheel. In astrology, when you're looking at the signs and the houses, it's a wheel. It looks like it's a wheel, and it's got with the houses, there's 12 houses. So if you think of like a pie cut into 12 pieces, that's what the astrology wheel looks like. And so it starts off with the first house, and the first house is where your ascendant is. So like for me, my first house, my ascendant is Leo, so Leo's in my first house. And so that house is like, who you are, like what you're developing into, how people see you. It's the house of self. And then the second house is about like possessions, money, wealth, mostly possessions. Third house is about communication. It's the house of like groups, also siblings, relationships. The 4th house is the house of family, your foundation. It's also the house of your own mother and how that relationship was. 5th house is the house of children, creative activities, fun. 6th house is the house of health and also how you're of service and also daily activities. 7th house is relationships, including marriages. 8th house is sex, death, and taxes.
Oh. The 3 things we expect in life.
9th house is spirituality, philosophy, travel. 10th house is career, how you show up in the world. 11th house is groups. And 12th house is it's spirituality. It's like meditation. It's like the big, the astral realm is like 12th house stuff. Mm-hmm. So when you're looking at your chart, so I'll give for myself as an example again. So my sun sign is in Cancer. We talked about that. Well, my sun sign is in Cancer in the 12th house. So my sun is in the 12th house. So I show up as nurturing and, motherly in the 12th house, which is like that astral realm. So, I'm in the realm of birth, holding space for that. And then I also have my hypnotherapy certification. I'm a meditation teacher. And so, I love all that stuff. Like mm-hmm. we were talking about earlier, mm-hmm. What is my daily practice? And it's, tuning in, being present, it's a meditation practice. So that's how that shows up for me. With my moon sign being in Taurus, it's in the 10th house of career. So what do I need? What's instinctual for me? It's my career. It's doing midwifery. It's leading these mama groups. That's what I love. And then, like I said, with my rising being in the 1st house, of Leo, that's me being seen all the time. So you can see how those kind of relate together.
Yeah, I like because you did kind of say being that your 1st house is in the astrological house, that you've had the visions from the past of doing midwifery.
Yes, yeah,
so
exactly.
I kind of find that I love that. That's really awesome. That's like speaking to me right now.
When you look at your chart, it'll trip you out. Mm-hmm. When you look at those things and you're like, oh, that's why, I love this thing. And the opposite can be true too. Like I just did a reading for a gal who is a Virgo. And, Virgos are all about, well, generally speaking, okay, they're all about like organization. They're also very dedicated to their work, but they're passionate about their work. And so she's a Virgo sun. And she's like, but I want to be organized, but I just can never do it. Like, I just don't understand what's wrong with me. So we looked at her astrological chart. Yes, she does have her sun sign in Virgo. But one thing we haven't talked about, which that's what I'm saying, it's like an endless well. Each planet, each thing that we're talking about, which is in a house, also has relationships with other planets. And so there's Saturn. And Saturn is the planet of like, okay, you just keep walking into the wall and it's like still there, but you just keep walking into it. And it's because this is, Saturn is there to help us along with our evolution. So it's like the peeling back of the layers of the onion. That's what Saturn is all about. And so for her sun it was in a square. It's a relationship with Saturn where it's like, yeah, your life path this time around is you are a Virgo and it's going to be challenging for you to be a Virgo. Oh. So yes.
From beginning.
Yeah, so you're learning about that. You're learning about how to move through those challenges this lifetime, how to offer yourself compassion, So so that gave her this sense of peace, like, okay, there's something wrong with me. It's meant to be challenging for me. And now that I know that, I can give myself grace, as I'm moving through this and evolve, naturally this way.
So I've heard a thing about the charts is that if you have all these points on this one side of the chart, it's bad and you're probably going to have a hard life. But if you have it all on this other side, you're going to have this blessed life. Is that true? Or is there a way of interpreting that's... Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great question. So when you have a bunch of planets in a particular house, that's called a stellium, and it means that house is just going to be an important area of your life. Because remember, the houses are just areas of our lives. So that's going to be an area where you're going to have a lot of development in that part of your in that area in your life. And then when you have a bunch, so each side also of the wheel is important because like the first, 2 or 3, those are all about mostly like and then there's like the family and relationships. It moves into that part of it, and children, that's like another part of the wheel, 4, 5, and 6. And then you move into, like your career and travel and philosophy, and groups, like the 11th house is about groups. So you move into that, and then with the 12th house being more of like the astral realm. So if you have a bunch of planets that are in one of these areas of the chart, it just would mean that you're going to see a lot. You're going to experience a lot this lifetime in that area. So, for instance, if you have a ton of stuff that's in your house, the 4th, 5th, and 6th house, you're probably going to have a lot of stuff up with family, and maybe some stuff up with health, this time around. So there's definitely no area of the chart where it's like, oh, that's a bad area. And actually, there's nothing bad in astrology, like talking about Saturn, Pluto, the planet Pluto, when you have that in, and we all have, by the way, all signs in our wheel, our individual wheels. We all have all planets in our individual wheels. So we've all got Saturn somewhere in our chart. And Pluto is the planet of extreme transformation, like big changes happening. So yeah, there are some people, I know someone who has Pluto in her conjunct, which means like sit in line with her sun. So like she's going to go through big transformations this lifetime. And when you go through big transformations, shit hits the fan on a pretty regular basis and you're working through it. So the fact that she knows that, she's like, now she's actually just finished a life coaching certification because she's like, look, I've been through the shit. I know how to help people make it through the shit. So there's no bad area. There's no, bad thing. It's just a matter of learning what you got and then giving yourself compassion and grace around it.
Mm-hmm. And I think I forgot, we just dived right in to clarify that your chart is based on your date of birth, location, and time, right?
Yes. Yeah, exactly. So basically and we're talking about your natal chart right now. That's what this is called. And this is basically like as if somebody stood right where you gave birth, right where you were born, where your mom gave birth, and then looked up at the sky and took a picture. So, and like where everything was at the moment that you were born and from the location that you were born in. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Awesome.
So it's unique,
Yeah.
No, yeah, it will be very unique unless somebody was in the same hospital at the same exact second, popping out, ready to go. It's not going to match.
That would be amazing to get to meet, like somebody who is, right next to you, in the crypt next to you or something like that, and see, how your lives might be similar.
It's actually kind of funny that you mentioned that. I was actually watching a YouTube video about they do like readings from Reddit. And one of the big things is like, what's the 1 in a million thing that's ever happened to you? And there was these 2 people. This one guy was kind of writing about it, and he said that he was born in a small town of like 500 people. He traveled the world, and like by the time he was 40, he was on a complete different side of the planet. And he ran into somebody who was born the exact same day, within the exact same hour, in the exact same hospital.
And no coincidence.
No coincidence at all.
Ooh.
Yeah, and it's like, and they were talking like their families were intertwined. Their family was actually visiting that town, and his mom went into labor, like, I think it was like a month early.
Whoa.
And so they weren't even supposed to be there, but because they were there, they gave, she gave birth there. And then, like, they were just talking about their lives and how a lot of things just kind of lined up with, getting specific jobs, specific area of work. So, I mean, yeah, it is kind of one of those interesting 1 in a million shots. Like, I'm actually kind of interested to see who was next to me on that day.
When I was born, I don't know if the New York Times still does this, but my aunt was able to purchase a thing that was like a horoscope for the life of somebody who was born this day and this year. And in it, it said specifically somebody born this day and this year will either lose one or both parents very early on in life. And can you imagine my aunt like going, I just bought this thing and I want to give it to my brother's baby, but I just read this line, and then me finding it like at 16 or 17 going, oh, whoa, because I did lose a parent very early on. So it was just like, whoa, that's chills, creepy.
Wow.
Yeah, so it was just interesting to know that was already like a thing that I was going to have to work through and in my life. So it was like, oh, fascinating.
Yeah.
But how can somebody, how does all of this chart relate to your horoscope in the newspaper?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, it's your sun sign, that you're seeing in the newspaper and your horoscope. And the horoscope also is talking about what's happening currently astrologically and how that might affect you with your sun sign. So, we have our natal chart where everything is fixed. So the moon was, in Taurus at this degree, when you were born. But, of course, everything is moving, continuously, and through the cosmos. And so, so that's just telling you like what's going to happen in relation to where we're at, right now, like how the sun is moving around, the cosmos. So like, for instance, when your birthday happens, the sun is moving back around again. They call it the solar return in astrology when you have your birthday. And that's when the sun that's moving around rolls over your own sun. And so it's a time of personal reflection. We know that. So yeah, it's about how all the other planets are in relation to your sun sign. For the horoscope. So that's what they're looking at. Like, they'd be like, okay, well, Venus is, which is the planet of love. Venus is, trine to your sun, and trine is, it's another way of describing relationships. So, it's in good favor right now. So they might say, look for love. Like, it's a good time to, go out on a date or something like that. These next few days. So that's how it's loosely based on that, but it's just your sun sign alone. So it gives you a little bit of info, but, we take it all with a grain of salt, of course.
How would you tell our listeners how to pick a good horoscope to read? Because we have so many apps, so many places where you can go and read them. What are telltale signs that this person knows what they're talking about and they're not just throwing stuff on the paper?
Well, that's a great question. Honestly, I think that a lot of astrologers who I really respect and love, I think they do go with their intuition a lot, because there's so much that you can be connecting with. So I like Yasmin Boland. I think she's really great. She's been doing astrology for a long time. She's from Australia, and she has a book called Moonology, which I really like. And she has an introductory course to astrology through Hay House, which I think is called Astrology Made Easy. And so she is great because she puts things, it's very clear. She's also very positive in the way that she does astrology. So, so doing a daily horoscope or something like that, I really like hers because they're very upbeat and positive. And she does share a little bit about why, like she'll say, well, Venus is in the 7th house or whatever. So she talks a little bit about that. I also think it's really what you personally resonate with, because you could be following an astrologer who is just doing it completely intuitively, and what they say you really resonate with and it really speaks to you. So I would say explore, look around a little bit and just like read who lights you up, and just go with that.
Like that.
And how would one go about finding out information about their chart, how would they look for it, or who should they talk to?
Yeah. Well, there is a website called astro.com, and you can type in, it's kind of complex, but you can type in your information and get a chart from there. The chart is going to have some things that may be difficult to interpret if you're new, but it'll give you the information like what's your sun sign, your moon sign, your rising sign, and then like doing an intro course, I think, is really helpful. There's some books that I sent over to you, so, you can be recommending those for beginners. But of course, seeking out an astrologer, somebody who can run your chart direct for you and, give you the specific information that you're looking for can be really fun. Because there's stuff that an astrologer can look up for you. For instance, like, what area of your life are you going to be really lucky in, or, like what's some information, are you going to get married? Like there's stuff in our chart that can tell us so many things. Like what if somebody is really curious about what's my dharmic path? Like I'm having a hard time finding my purpose. We can give really good information about that from the stars. So finding an astrologer, there's a lot, you can get some basics, but you can also dive really deep into questions that you have too.
So as Millennial Pagan Podcast, a lot of millennials are about to turn 30. And every single person I know who has dived into astrology is like, 30 is a big deal. Why? I'm like, is it just because now we expect we're not children anymore? And everyone goes, I'm going to stay 29 forever.
It's your Saturn return.
Oh, okay.
So based on what we know about Saturn now.
You can imagine.
So yeah, I think it's 32. I think is when you're each of the planets goes through the signs at a different pace. Mm-hmm. So like I talked about, the moon goes through really quickly every 2.5 days, and Saturn, it's like I think it's every 32 years it comes back around. So yeah, it's Saturn, that's about your evolution. So it's about looking at yourself and how have I grown? Where do I need to grow? And I kind of look at Saturn like it's a teacher, where it's like a mirror. It'll put things up in front of you like, oh, you thought that you were just going to continue forward with this because, it's what you know? No, like it's just going to fall away because, you need to be going this direction for your soul's evolution.
Well, if it's at 32, then that's kind of rude because my Jupiter is my 31. Oh. I was like, no. And then from Sound Guy T, we have one last question. What's up with Mercury retrograde?
Oh, yeah. That's a good one. Okay.
I think everybody's had that on their minds since the beginning of this episode.
Okay, Mercury is about to go retrograde in Aquarius and in my financial sector. I'm not happy about this. I'm like, no, I just got a bunch of raises.
Well, Mercury is the planet of communication and technology. And so, like our cars too fall under Mercury. So when Mercury is in retrograde, so Mercury is moving forward, and then it doesn't actually move backward. It just looks like it does to us. So it's moving forward. It passes over the sign that it's in. Then it seems like it goes backwards through the sign again. Then it goes forward again through the sign. So when Mercury is in retrograde, it's a time to take stock. Where it's like, okay, look around you, like see, what's going on, what's blowing up. And it's all information, for us to determine, okay, we have our will, thank goddess, we have our will. So, what do we want to do about this? Do we want to, make a change in this area? Or, so why it can cause us problems is because stuff blows up and then it's annoying, or it's like, why is this happening? And that's one reason why I love astrology, because if you're like, I'm trying to do this project, on my computer, I'm developing a website, let's say, and I keep, doing this and it keeps disappearing, or whatever, like it should work, but the button's not working. And then if you know that Mercury is in retrograde, you can give yourself a break and be like, okay, maybe I want to come back to this when Mercury is out of retrograde. It can also, astrology can help you plan stuff. So like if you were going to negotiate for a raise, you probably would want to stray away from Mercury in retrograde to have that conversation, because when Mercury is in retrograde, things can go a little wonky. So with communication as well. So you might want to wait until it's out of retrograde. So it's not that it's a bad thing. And like when Mercury goes retrograde, like you were saying, it's in Aquarius. And we're in Aquarius season right now, of course, because your birthday is coming up. So.
It's my season.
So all of us are affected by what season we're in. We're in Aquarius, so all of us are feeling Aquarius vibes right now. And Aquarius is well, you know what Aquarius. It's you.
Oh, I know, but my listeners don't. They're not all about me all the time. Thank gods.
Well, it's about expressing yourself. It's about your individuality, but it's also about the greater good. You're doing this podcast not for the, 4 individuals that are sitting here at this table right now. You're doing it for the collective, for the greater good.
That's what they think.
And for your personal expression, which is beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
For sure. So, with Mercury going in retrograde in Aquarius, we might have stuff that comes up with communication with regard to expressing ourselves, like what's important to us. So it gives us pause. It's like, okay, what am I really trying to say here right now about myself? Like, this thing that I do, being a pagan, like having a conversation about that with someone who is, perhaps really strict in a religion that's very limiting, for them to accept other religions. How can I express myself, to this person in a way that's going to be received respectfully, and yet yet still be assertive about what's important to me, and that I have my rights to, follow what feels right for me. So with Mercury in retrograde, if you have that conversation and it goes wonky, it's an opportunity to look at that for yourself. Well, how do I want to express myself? So, I don't know, Mercury in retrograde, like, it is what you make of it, really, I don't know. That's all I got.
I've personally always had actually really good luck in Mercury retrograde. I don't know why. Like I've started jobs I've liked in Mercury retrograde. I've made like life-changing decisions while Mercury was in retrograde, and it's gone well for me. So I won't complain. I always look at it as like a moment to take pause, exactly like what you said, and think before I speak, and think before I do. And if something does happen, I get like that moment of, okay, give it a second. Mercury's being slow, figuring himself out in wherever he is. But that's really always how I've looked at it, is always a moment to take pause and think before I speak.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I've never had like a bad Mercury retrograde. It's always been more Freddy.
That's awesome. And yeah, that's your perspective on it, because of how you're looking at it, how you're accepting it. Okay, this feels a little off right now. Okay, so yeah, that's perfect. It's a great way to explain how to powerfully be with Mercury in retrograde, or anything that's going on astrologically. Like, there's a reason, that we're experiencing this right now. What's the lesson I can take from this?
Very much. I love that. For the whole entire show, that's exactly what we need to say, is that what lessons do we need to take from the sky?
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Jennifer, for coming on and giving us that amazing lesson. I hope all of you got as much as I did out of it, because this is very much an area where I don't have a whole lot of knowledge personally. So it was something I was really excited to do. Not just because, it's my birthday and it's all about me time, because it's Aquarius time, but it's also all about our Patreon supporters.
Yay.
We want a big thank you for Aaron and, of course, Simon for coming back. So thank you to both of you guys for being Patreon supporters, and if you are at the $5 mark or higher, you'll be getting your thank you note in the mail very shortly.
Yes.
And well, Jera, how do they find you on the interwebs?
Of course, I'm on Twitter under @Jera Stone, and of course my Instagram's at it's Haggard_cosplay.
Awesome.
Yes. And if anybody wants to find out more information about what you do, or about kind of just getting in contact with you for the reasons that we were talking about on the show, how do we reach you?
On Instagram, Magical Mamas is at Magical Mama Phoenix, and it's Mama is MAMA, and then Phoenix all the way spelled out, Magical Mama Phoenix. And we post stuff on there all the time about our circles that we're doing, stuff about, the astrological realms, the wheel of the year, all those kind of things are posted on there, witchy shit, mostly from mamas. And then on Facebook, it's Magical Mama Retreat is on Facebook.
Awesome. And if they want to get in contact with you to have you do their chart or anything astrological, is there any other location that they can get to you, or are those the best places to start?
They can actually set up an appointment online through Magical Mama Retreat on Facebook.
Awesome.
Nice.
Sweet. Okay. And of course, you guys can find me at Autumn Iron Wolf Circle on WordPress. You can find me on Facebook as Autumn Wolf and on Twitter as Autumn Wolf. And you can find the Millennial Pagan Podcast Instagram at Pagan Pod. You can also find us on Twitter and Facebook, Pagan Pod on Twitter, Millennial Pagan Podcast on Facebook.
Yeah. And of course, you can check us out at the Astara market coming up pretty soon. There's probably a commercial about that.
Yep, and don't forget about Patreon. If you are not a Patreon supporter, I'm sure you already know how to do that from another ad that was somewhere in the middle of this episode.
Yeah.
Thanks to Sound Guy T. So from all of us here, merry meet.
Merry part.
And merry meet again.